everyone, welcome back to Cincinnati Zoo Tales. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Mark. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Jenna, we're really excited. We've got a great guest in today. I always enjoy when we've got guests who are outside the zoo community that come in to talk to us and teach us about all kinds of wonderful things. Today we're being joined by Ian Zeglin. Ian is the manager of garden operations, and he works at the Greenacres Foundation, which is a local organization just north of Cincinnati. Ian, first off, before you get into Greenacres, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you coming in and chatting with us today.
Yeah, wonderful. Very happy to be here.
Yes, thanks for joining us. I'm sure we have a lot to learn. And we always start off kind of by asking our guests, like, how did you get into what you are into? And you might have to explain to us exactly what your title means, and we want to hear about Greenacres. So I guess whatever order that makes the most sense, and if you want to tell us about yourself and your position, or if you want to tell us about Greenacres first, we want to know it all.
Cool. Yeah, so Greenacres is a nonprofit foundation in Cincinnati. It was started in the late 80s by Louis and Louise Nippert. They're a fairly well-known family here in Cincinnati, and they basically kind of were looking at the way things were going and said, you know, I think that what we want to do is start a foundation. We want to set aside a few hundred acres in Cincinnati, and we want to conserve and preserve that land and use it to teach mostly children. We're kind of branching out from there at this point, but with the goal of teaching children and people about arts, agriculture, and the environment is kind of the main focus. So that was almost 40 years ago now, and we've grown quite a bit. We now have multiple farms. We've got one in Brown County, we've got one in Indiana, and we're just looking to have as much of an impact in those kind of areas in terms of education as we can.
That's awesome. So how did you get involved with the organization?
So technically my first day at the organization was in 2011.
Okay.
I did not grow up doing agriculture at all. I was not a kid that grew up on a farm at all. My interest in it kind of started actually in a trip in high school. Just happened to go out to a farm with this high school trip, and they put us to work on the farm. And one of the things that
Sounds like a rough field trip.
It was so fun. It was obviously, I think it was fun. You know, at the time, it's like, okay, here we go. And one of the things they had us do was they had this big strawberry patch, and they had us pick the snails off of it. And so we were picking the snails off. We were putting them in buckets, right? Which everyone was like, this is terrible. I'm like, this is great. Sneaking strawberries. And then you would take them, and they said, okay, you're done with the snails. You have these big buckets full of snails. Let's give them to the chickens. So we gave them to the chickens.
I was going to ask. This whole time I was feeling bad for the snails. I'm like,
yeah.
What happened to the snails?
Well, the snails got slurped up.
Okay, well, at least it was for a good reason.
Yes, and so the snails go into the chicken coop. The chickens go crazy for them. And the farmer that was there at the time explains, so we take the snails off the strawberries, we give them to the chickens eat them, they eat the shells, there's calcium in them, they come out with better eggs, stronger shells, and we then take the shells, we put them into the compost, and the compost goes back on the strawberries. And at the time, I was like, no way.
Yeah.
That's the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Like it's this interconnected loop, but
Right.
you had no idea, right?
Right, exactly. And it just goes, oh, well, this just makes sense. This just makes sense. And so that kind of was in my brain for a while, and I was in school. I was a nutrition major for a little bit, among other things. I was a little bit of a lost boy in school. And I decided for a summer, I really loved that farm that I'd visited, and I said, you know what? This was the next summer, and I went, I'm just going to go work on a farm for the summer. If I'm going to be in the food area, I should learn about where food comes from.
Sure.
And so it was actually a summer job at Greenacres, and that was in 2011. And I loved it. I really loved it. And I came back for a few years. I had the opportunity a couple years in to kind of work under a grower that had started working that was really, really, really talented. And he kind of opened my eyes to how productive small acreage can be. And from that point on, I was just totally obsessed. And so since then, I'm coming up on, next year will be my 12th growing season. Done vegetables, done a little bit of animal stuff here and there, and just kind of really been running with it since then.
That's really neat. So explain your title.
Yeah.
I love how you told this story about exactly how you got into this, and it kind of gives us a hint at what you're doing now and the different types of farming. But if you go to work, what are you doing on a daily basis?
Gosh. So my title is kind of I'm the top of the umbrella for the garden department, which is basically any kind of vegetables, flowers, anything like that. For better or worse, I'm in charge of them. We do a number of things on the farm. The main thing we do is vegetable production on about anywhere from some of our farms are as little as an acre, some are only as big as maybe an acre and a half, 2 acres of production at any given time. We do a cut flower program. We're working on developing a lot more native and perennial stock to be able to offer those to the community. And so we do kind of a number of things. My day is mostly just moving people at this point.
Okay.
And I have a wonderful team, some of the best people you've ever met. And they do a great job of making sure the farm runs awesome every day. And I generally am on bigger picture stuff these days.
Okay.
Doing basically new stuff. We do a lot of research. We have a research department at Greenacres. And so we partner with universities, and we're trying stuff that, it's okay if we fail. It's okay if we learn something from this and are able then to take that to farmers and help them. And so I spend a lot of time doing that, and then whatever kind of comes up throughout the day. Yeah.
And you said there's multiple sites at Greenacres now. Which, are you on one location at all times, or do you kind of get to different locations? Like, where are you typically at?
Home base is the Cincinnati location in
Okay.
Indian Hill. And then I make it out to Indiana, I make it out to Brown County every once in a while. But generally I'm kind of all over the place. Yeah, but mostly in Indian Hill.
Indian Hill.
Yeah.
And before we get too far into it, will you just paint a little bit of a picture for the audience of what this place looks like?
Yeah.
I've seen photos online and it looks gorgeous.
It
So
is
I want to
gorgeous.
kind of demonstrate to the listeners what it was like there.
So Greenacres in the Cincinnati location is actually, it was originally, the farm was called Winding Creek Farm. I believe that's the name. And do you know when you go to the grocery store, those little instant yeast packets? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
I'm
if I
blanking
do.
on this one.
So
Sorry.
there's
I
little,
wanna help you out, but
you'll
like, I
see,
don't know
now
if
that
I
I've said
can.
it, they're usually like on a top shelf. It's a little
Okay.
packet of instant yeast. They're
Okay.
like brightly colored. They're called Fleischmann's yeast, right? And the Winding Creek farm was the Fleischmann's estate. It's the farm they built with yeast money. And so it was kind of at a point left in a bit of disrepair. So when Greenacres took it over in the late 80s, there was a lot of repairs that needed to be made. But it was when it was built in the 40s, it was a beautiful farm. And when we talk about things like sustainability and stuff, this was built in ways where, the manure from the hogs was pumped into the orchards, and they had all these kind of self-cycling systems on the farm, which is really cool. And they have big, beautiful estate and big, gigantic greenhouse that we had to repair. So it's this really beautiful old farm that we've kind of repurposed into educational infrastructure. So the greenhouse is not just for production; it has educational uses. Our agricultural education building was an old kennel house where they used to keep the hunting dogs, and we put a big addition on it, and now that's where the agricultural educators are stationed. And so we kind of have all these different sites on property. We have old barns that have been turned into education buildings as well, and basically just taking this beautiful old farm and then just turned it into a place where we can teach as many people as possible. We continue to developing different parts of the farm to continue doing that.
So you mentioned that you have people that are like planting and doing that, but are you managing like at what point in the year you're planting certain vegetables or certain flowers, and like you're learning that, and where does this production go to? Because you guys aren't selling to grocery stores,
Correct.
and there's, can you explain a little bit about how you're deciding what to plant and when and where that goes to?
Yes. So it takes a long time to learn what to plant when. And fortunately, I've done a lot of the mistakes. And so now I feel like what my job has turned into is helping the other members of my team kind of learn those things. And so we're working on planting plans all the time. We have a number of apprentices that we have that we're kind of trying to work with them to develop this kind of understanding of what the seasonality is for vegetables, what the seasonality is for flowers. If I'm lucky, I get to go out and do some of that planting because that's my favorite thing to do. But yeah, you kind of learn that over time. It's a tough thing to learn because you could learn from another farmer, maybe that's up in Maine, which there's a lot of great farmers up north. And they'll give you, hey, here's when we plant this, and then you come down to Cincinnati, totally different agricultural zone, and that's all out the window. So it's kind of a little bit of give and take in terms of learning. Once you kind of get it down, it's pretty spot on. So I spend a lot of time facilitating, making sure that the members of my team are able to kind of understand their own planting plan. I kind of look over and go, oh yeah, it looks all right. And we've got it pretty dialed in at this point. We've been growing. The teams that are here now or at Greenacres now have been growing for quite a while. So that part's pretty easy these days. All of our food goes to our farm stores, whether it's the farm in Indiana or the farm in Cincinnati. We used to do a few farmers markets and things like that, and we used to do a little more distributing. But when we really look at the mission of Greenacres, which is to educate, the best thing we can do is bring people to the farm, because then that gives us a whole other opportunity to educate. And so if we can get people there, that's great. And so we've really doubled down on, instead of going outward, staying inward, and making our farm store a little more educational. We're going to be adding quite a bit of expansion to our farm store and kind of changing its location with the goal of being able to have, when people come in, it's like, yeah, you're buying food, but you're also learning about this or learning about that, and giving people an opportunity to, every chance we get to educate. And so all of our food goes there at this point, and we donate anything that doesn't make it.
Awesome.
As best we can. We kind of have an order of operations for our food. It either goes to customers. If it doesn't go to customers, it gets donated. If it's too far gone to be donated, it goes to animals. And if it's too far gone for animals, it goes in the compost. So we try and be as responsible as we can with our food.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Can you tell anybody listening who might want to visit, how does it work? Can anybody go? Is it a super public store? Is it, can you tell us the hours, that sort of thing?
The store is the only real public, either store on either farm is kind of the only real public space we have. Because we have so many kids on property, we're really picky about making sure that things are left private, because we just don't want random people on the farm when we have as many kids as we do kind of wandering around. If you want to engage with the farm store, at least in Indian Hill, it's open Tuesday through Saturday. I'm totally going to botch the hours, but I think it's from 10 to 5 during the week, and then on Saturday it's open from I think 9 to 1 or something along those lines. You can definitely find it on the website. It's all there.
Gotcha.
Okay. And why would we want to come to the farm store? Can you tell us, how can you convince somebody that they should come to this farm store rather than getting their produce from the grocery store? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing differently? And, I know it's amazing stuff you're doing, so can you explain to us the difference? And
It's a tough thing to answer, because the context for anyone is going to be different,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Some people are going to want to come shop at a small farm or a farm that raises food responsibly for environmental reasons. That's when we get a lot, Some people are going to come for health reasons. We're not spraying anything. We're not putting anything on the food that you would ever be scared of. So we get people for that. We get people because, honestly, if you grow food well, it just tastes better. So we have people who come just for that aspect. We also do have quite a large livestock operation. So we do grass-fed, grass-finished beef. We have lamb. We do hogs. We do chicken for meat. We do eggs. We do all those things too. And so we raise them all as responsibly as we can. And so I think that our draw is that we just have really great food all at one spot. And so, depending on what people's kind of ethos is with how they want to eat, the draw can be very different.
No, that's very important. And I think one of the big draws that makes you such a success is the manner at which you go through your farming process, right? Will you talk a little bit about the kind of rotational pastures and generative farming, is I know the term that you guys like to use. Will you just talk to us a little bit about that and why it's so important?
Yeah. So we really believe that food starts with soil. I think that the other thing we believe is that animals moved responsibly can build soil. What I mean by that is that in a really ideal system, you can have animals raised on, say, pasture, and if they're raised responsibly, they can generate soil health while also creating food. In a lot of modern agricultural practices, it's really about kind of taking away from things to grow food. So if you look at, say, a corn and soy field that you see all over Ohio, that soil is completely dead. I mean, in most of the winter, it's just lying there bare. We believe that rather than using chemical fertilizers to grow food, that if we take really good care of our soil and treat it in the way Mother Nature kind of intended it to be treated, that soil is going to grow food for us that is healthier. We can't, there's a lot of research being done about well-raised food and what kind of impact that has on the nutrient profile of the food, and then maybe what nutrient profile of the food can have, or the effect that can have on people. We're doing some studies with some universities to see kind of what we can gather from that. But really what we're doing is at the end of the day, is we're looking to how do we build the best possible soil in a simple way that can raise as much food as possible. And so one of the big things that we do in the garden department when we're raising vegetables is we use animals as part of our rotation for our vegetable production. So the project that is like really the hallmark, at least of the Cincinnati farm, is we call it the lay field. Lay farming is something that isn't new. It's actually a pre-industrial style of farming. Was kind of the intention of, say you have an acre of land, and it doesn't matter if you know how big an acre is. You have a plot of land, and if that was your land, what you would have to do is you have to divide it in half, right? And you go, okay, on this half I'm going to grow my, let's say, grain or vegetables. And while I'm doing the growing on that side of my land, on the other side I'm going to raise grasses and clovers and things like that. I'm going to run my animals over top of it, get their manure, get their urine, get their hoof impact. And maybe I do that for 2-3 years. And when my vegetables or my grain start to go kind of not grow so well, I flip the plots. So now the plot that was grasses and clovers and animals that soil's been built up and is healthy and has a lot of fertility in it. And we're going to grow in that, and we're going to turn our vegetable plot into grasses and clovers and animals. So it's this idea of kind of letting land rest, letting it lay, and then and spending that time building up our soil so that we're not importing anything to build our soil up. We're just maintaining through kind of natural processes. Mm-hmm. So what we did, we started this project 7 years ago now. We brought animals back into the vegetable rotation. Once industrialization happened, that acre you have that's split in half, someone came around and said, hey, I've got this chemical fertilizer. You just put it down. Everything's going to grow like crazy. And everyone goes, no way. That's not how it works. Guess what? They did it. They did, instead of having the acre split in half, the whole acre grew, and it was the best yield they've ever had. They've never seen anything like it. Fantastic. This is great. So they start just producing all on that acre. They start using chemical fertilizers. What people didn't understand was that those chemical fertilizers and are going to degrade your soil. So that health you were building up is now gone. And when that health is gone, it's hard to bring back. I think it takes like 1,000 years or something. Wow. It's an insane amount of time to build even an inch of topsoil.
So they have like years of really awesome production, mm-hmm. but then it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what happens is all of a sudden, okay, I've been putting down this much, and okay, the crop's not doing quite as well. I need to put down more. I need to put down more. I need to put down more. You're growing the same crop year after year. You're putting down what we have calculated to be the fertility regimen of this crop, when plant health is just as complicated as human health in a lot of ways, and it doesn't need just nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, just like we need more than just protein, carbs, and fat. Mm-hmm. We have micronutrients. We have all these different things. And so you're putting these fertilizers down. You start to see your crops degrade, and all of a sudden, as they get less healthy, all of a sudden pests start showing up. And all of a sudden, after you've been doing this, not rotating, all of a sudden diseases start showing up. So now you're spraying pesticides, and now you're spraying fungicides, and you're doing all these things. And now all of a sudden you have this completely dead soil that even if you wanted to go back to your previous system of rotating, your soil's so far beat up that it's going to be a decade or more to even remotely get back to where you were. And that is kind of the state of farming in this nation right now, is that we've destroyed so much of our soil that even if we want to go back to it, it's going to be a serious, serious, serious lift. But that kind of, to get back to what I was saying of what we do is at this time, livestock and vegetable production were married completely. Once this kind of industrial agriculture revolution began, they became divorced. So we're trying to bring them back because we really do believe that animal impact can build soil. And so we do this kind of long rotation where each year we move a plot, just like how I explained, from pasture into vegetable production, and a vegetable production plot back into pasture. And we're kind of seeing how much fertility can we build doing this, and can we grow like what would be considered profitable veg production in this kind of really, really, really simple way, using just animals, grasses, legumes, and the one thing we've added is compost.
So for somebody who, like, I have a moderate idea of how this works, or like an understanding of this type of farming, but I still have a lot of questions, and for me, I can kind of picture it, but imagine somebody's never heard of this. Mm-hmm. Is it literally, we'll use an acre again. Mm-hmm. So you have this one square acre where there are cows, mm-hmm. and next to it are strawberries. Mm-hmm. So 2020, the cows are in this plot, then mm-hmm. 2021, they're in the strawberry plot, and the strawberries go to a next one. Like, is that Can you explain it so that like we can picture it?
Yes. So take that acre I was talking about, split it into 4 quadrants.
Okay.
Each year, 2 quadrants are in pasture, 2 quadrants are in vegetable production. And each year, one of those quadrants rotates. So each quadrant gets 2 years of pasture, 2 years of vegetable production.
And pasture means an animal is living on it, grazing on it.
Not living on it full time.
Okay.
One of the most important parts of raising animals well on land, and something you see driving on the highway all the time is examples of this, is if animals are just left on a piece of land all the time, they're going to graze it down and actually beat up the land. I think animals right now in agriculture get a really, really bad rap because there's a lot of ways that they can be destructive. Just like any tool or anything, making sure that you manage things correctly is really the fine-tuning knob of these things. And so if they were just living there full time, that ground would be destroyed.
Okay.
Animals are hard. If you think about prairies would have these giant herds, say even in America, giant herds of buffalo would come through maybe 3-4 times a year max, and they'd come in and they would eat all the grass, drop all their manure, kind of have this huge impact, and then they would leave. And that is the natural system of how grasses and these kind of systems work, because they need that time to regenerate. And so what it looks like for us is kind of these grasses and clovers and things growing, animals come in, they hit it really hard, we then let it rest. We maybe graze animals on these pasture plots 3-4 times a year.
Okay.
And that's kind of the max for us right now. Yeah.
Okay. And then can you also go into like the health of soil?
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people are like, I can go to Lowe's and I can buy a bag of soil. What do you mean there's a shortage? Or what do you mean we don't have any topsoil left? Like, and the health of it, it's a living thing. Can you describe soil and its health a little bit more and how the manure helps and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so soil is like, healthy soil is extremely complex. And I think that at least in the agricultural world, healthy soil, that gets thrown out all the time. And I think that understanding what that means is kind of tough, but there are some ways to think about it. There are 3 different kind of things that I think about when I think of soil in general, that it needs to be healthy, and it needs to have, let me put it this way. There's physical properties of soil, so that's like what the makeup of it is. Is it clay? Is it sandy? Is it whatever? Is it loose? Is it compact? That's really important. Chemical aspects of soil. So does it have the elements of soil or of productivity that needs in the soil, actually, just as chemicals? And that's not necessarily like applied chemicals, that's just boron and phosphorus and magnesium. Is that all in the soil? So making sure that's all good. And then the last thing is the biological aspect of soil. So the biological aspect is what makes all of the chemical side of things available to plants, at least in a natural system.
Okay.
In a conventional system, you're using water-soluble fertilizers, which don't need biology to be synthesized into plant nutrition. In a soil-based system that you're not using water-soluble fertilizers, biology is the key that unlocks all of these things. So that's kind of how you have to think of soil. It has those 3 aspects. And then what we at Greenacres talk about with healthy soil is there's these 5 principles of soil health. And they make a lot of sense in a pasture-based system, but they don't always translate into a vegetable production system. And that's actually one of the things we're working on in this Layfield project really hard, is how do we translate these 5 principles of soil health into a vegetable production system. There are things like soil cover, keeping the soil covered. Mother Nature does not like bare soil. And a lot of these things are just mimicking Mother Nature as close as we can. No bare soil, a living root in the soil as much as possible, diverse roots, so diverse ecology, very little soil disturbance, so that means really reducing tillage or maybe not tilling at all, which is something that is kind of coming up in the agricultural world really intensely right now. And the last thing that we look at for building healthy soil is animal impact. What the animals do, like I kind of explained in that prairie scenario, is they have this, like, they're dropping manure there, which is just basically full of their gut microbes, and it's ready for soil biology to digest, and their hooves are pushing grasses just in the top couple inches of the soil. Their urine can be a fertilizer in itself, and having them impact the soil in that way is just basically the way soil was made to be built. I mean, that's how the prairies were built, and so we just kind of try and take all those concepts and make them work for a vegetable production system.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but there is a difference in, if I'm understanding this correctly, that like vegetable production versus flour production or like grain production. Would those all be different to you?
So what's really fun about what we do is like if you looked at a conventional side of things, those are completely different fields of, it's like we have to think about it completely different. With what we're doing is like really at the end of the day, if you have healthy soil, stuff grows. It's what I love about the way we farm is I tell people all the time I'm horrible at houseplants. I'm horrible because they have to be baby. You have to make sure they have the water. You have to make sure the light's just right. Here, I'm just like, we basically built a cake, right? Like we got this. We have the manure. We have the soil's not disturbed. It's loose. It's holding water very well. And all we do is we take that plant and we put it in and we go, nice, got it. You're growing, and we just let them go. And so, if you have healthy soil, we kind of think of it as the engine that drives all these things. What you're growing, there's some minutia there that you can tweak for sure. But if you have healthy soil, it's unbelievable. You can pretty much grow whatever you need to grow.
And I think that's part of what sets your generative farming techniques apart, right? Is the fact that I think most other farms in general would focus on the crop or the product, whatever they are trying to grow. It's not the soil that's the factor. It's, we need these soybeans to grow. So let's focus on the soybeans.
Right.
Do whatever we need to get those soybeans to grow. Whereas you guys are like, no, we want the base, that base soil. Once that's healthy, it doesn't matter what we grow, something's going to grow on it, right?
That's kind of how we think about it, yes.
And is that something that you guys have had to build up, or has it been healthy soil there since the 40s?
We're so lucky, and this is a serious blessing because the Nipperts, when they set this farm aside, it was already pretty well taken care of, and animals had been on the farm for years. And so we started off with pretty healthy soil and are just working to maintain and continue generating it to be better. That is not the situation for a lot of farmers in this country. A lot of people, if they start a small farm, are working from a really rough spot. Our farm in Brown County was soybeans for a decade plus straight. The ground is about as bad as it can get.
So what can you do? Add animals?
Animals is part of it. You have to understand that there needs to be animals can be a part of the process. Using certain, we call them, so cover crops is a concept that we use a lot. And cover crops are basically crops that are, or I should say plants that are really good at doing certain things for soil. So maybe they're really good at breaking up compaction, or maybe they're good at taking nitrogen from the air and fixing it in the soil, or maybe they're really good at putting sugars into the soil to feed the microbes. And so one of the things we're doing at that farm is we're using cover crops to kind of maybe break the soil up, add nitrogen, and then bring animals over top. You have to imagine is that like if it took thousands of years to build all this topsoil and that is now washed away, we're just really working hard to rebuild that. Exactly how you do that in the most efficient or best way possible, I'm not sure. If you can add compost to an entire farm, that would be great, but that's financially not really feasible for most larger farms, especially if you're looking at like an animal operation. But there are examples of amazing farmers all around the country and all around the world that have taken really marginal pieces of land and through correct grazing have completely rebuilt them and brought them completely back to life, which is really cool and really exciting to see because sometimes when you look at the landscape of agriculture in America, you can be pretty disappointed.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it feels like, what do we do now? Because there are tons of huge farmlands, or I don't know what the technical word would be, but farms where, like, are they going to die off eventually? If, like, these specific farms, let's say, if they have really bad soil, where can they go from? Like, there's going to be a point where they won't be productive anymore, right? And then what do you do from there?
There's some scary statistics out there that it's like, I've seen that, people say we have 60 harvests left. You know what I mean? Which is like a terrifying prospect. And that's doing things exactly the way we're doing them now. And is that number, where did that number come from? I don't know. Is it realistic? I'm not sure. But the idea is important to be thinking about. Like I said, is you have to add more and more and more to these systems, these input intensive systems to get the same amount of crop out. The other aspect of that is that the average age of a farmer is like 60 or something right now. So not only is our soils getting worse, but we have less people farming. They're older. They're going to be retiring soon. And so what does that all look like in the next 20 years? I really don't know.
And is that one of the main things you guys are hoping to teach? Not that specifically, but one of the reasons that Greenacres has agricultural classes is to, like, get this into the minds of youth right now? Like, or if somebody sent their child to one of the education programs, would you teach them about this sort of thing? Is this what they would be learning?
Yeah, it depends on which program they're coming for, but we hope that they can become advocates for agriculture at the least. The thing we're really doing is we're working on our apprenticeship program.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's one of, I guess I didn't really talk about that much in the beginning. That's one of my favorite things that we're doing right now. It doesn't matter if we figure out how to do all these systems. If the lay field works and we can build soil and grow food and it's healthy and we have high yields and all these things, that's great. If we don't have farmers to do it, none of it matters. It doesn't matter how much research we have. It doesn't matter any of these things. And unfortunately, there aren't that many places to learn farming out there right now, at least in this kind of way, in small scale, generative, regenerative, like kind of this scale. You can look it up on the internet. There's a lot of bad information. This might sound a little bit harsh, but I think a lot of academic programs are just not caught up to where farmers are. And so in this space, it's really a lot of farmers innovating and teaching other farmers, which is really, really, really cool, and I think is amazing. And so I've learned from other farmers, and the goal is to take our program, and because we have this, we're really lucky to have this foundation, and we're really lucky to have this beautiful property and this some of these amazing systems that we've been kind of developing. A big goal of ours is to become a real hub for teaching farmers, because at the end of the day, like I said, we need these people. Right now, our apprentice program is a 2-year program. I don't think you can learn this stuff in a small amount of time. You have to fail forward. It takes a long time. It's really complex, especially if you're doing a bunch of different crops. So it's a 2-year program. We try and get everyone to be able to, hopefully when they leave, be able to manage an acre on their own, be able to do their own thing. We're really putting a lot of work in developing that program, and really honing on the education of it, because it is complex. Farming is complicated. I think people think it's like, oh, you go out there with a pitchfork and you do this and that. It's really complex. And so we have this 2-year program, and we're hoping to be graduating and building that program over the next couple of years and be kind of churning farmers out into the world.
Will this be the first year that you do this program? Sorry.
So we'll be graduating our first apprentices. It was previously an internship for a summer. Our first 2-year apprentices will be graduating in November, and they've gone from being like brand new to being excellent growers in 2 years. I couldn't be more proud of them. They're unbelievable. And so it is possible.
Is this apprenticeship program paid? Like if somebody's interested, they could, okay.
It is paid.
And can they find information about applying for it and everything on the Greenacres website?
Yep, it's either on the website or we'll post it on social media when we start doing it. But it's a really cool program for people interested in agriculture. We just take people who are passionate and want to do it that's what they want to do with their lives.
That's awesome. And is that more aimed towards like people who have recently graduated college or are still in college? Or I guess any age if you're passionate, I guess. Right?
Any age, yeah, we'll take any age, but it is a 2-year program full time.
Okay.
I would love to take. We get a lot of college kids; they all want to come to the farm. We try and push them into our volunteer program. We have a cultivation club that meets once a month, and we have a ton of fun volunteering on the farm. But really, the apprenticeship is a full time. Like you're there to learn and work. So. And
is this based more on the vegetables and gardening side of things, or is it also working with the agriculture, with the animals being put into this? Are they learning one or the other or both?
One of the coolest things about our farm is that we have everything. We have so much of everything, and so they get to dabble in most things. We're looking to make that even kind of more intense next year, of really getting to see other departments, really getting to spend some more time with livestock. They have their own apprenticeship. But for us, it's very focused on vegetable production.
Okay.
We used to do a little bit more broad between animals and vegetables, and what we found was that gives you a really shallow, wide understanding of things, and what we're looking for is a deeper, narrow understanding.
Okay.
To really kind of hone in on some of these skills and be able to really do this.
So I totally believe you that it's very complicated, because I still don't know that I really understand it. But also you said once the soil's good, you put the plants in and they grow.
Yeah.
So you have good soil. So if somebody is thinking about this apprenticeship, what are the things they're going to be learning? Like, what are they doing? Are they planting seeds on a daily basis? Are they taking classes where they're learning about the nutrients in soil? Like, what would they be doing?
That is the goal, right? The last 2 years have been we've been flying by the seat of our pants, like really teaching here, working there, a little bit of a mixed bag. But what we're putting in place starting next year is an actual curriculum. So yes, they're doing, the first year is really spent just working on the farm. There's going to be an education and class component, but like it's all kind of coming at you so fast. The work is hard. It's really hard to be out in the sun for 8 to 10 hours a day, every day for most of the season.
Are they picking vegetables?
They're picking vegetables. They're planting vegetables. They're watering stuff in the greenhouse.
Oh,
They're like I said, they're harvesting. They're bringing stuff to the farm store. They're doing a little bit of everything.
The whole cycle.
We have our horticulture team here, and we're like, they have got to have the hardest job.
Yeah,
out in the sun, always like with like branches all over them and things. I'm like, oh, I do not envy that.
It attracts a very specific kind of person who likes to just really kind of break themselves at work.
Yes.
I personally love that aspect of the job. But yeah, so they get to do a little bit of everything. But what we will be doing next year is with this curriculum, we're going to be focused on, kind of a couple themes that we're really going to be working through. Soil is obviously one that's like the main one. We're going to work through crops. There's an aspect of people with farming, being in a farmer's market, understanding how to sell to people, understanding how to manage people.
Oh, yeah, that's
Anyone who's ever run a volunteer program knows that like running volunteers seems like, oh great, people just show up. That's a huge management burden, having them understand that. And then understanding the profitability side of things as well is going to be kind of the 4 themes that we'll be working through while people are doing all the work and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's an awesome program that we're kind of able to see. And you guys are in a unique position to be able to teach people each aspect of the business, right?
Yeah.
Like running a farm, it is kind of a business at the end of the day.
Oh, it is, yeah, 100%.
You need to have the health of the farm, the health of the soil, but you need to know the people side. That's the side that I would completely underestimate is like, yeah, I understand the crops, I understand the livestock, but you need to be able to handle and manage people as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of, it's a little bit of everything.
So you've kind of mentioned your favorite things, but what is your favorite thing about going to work each day?
Oh, so, I've been doing this now for 11 years. I got into it with grand ideas of what food could be, and I still have those. But where I'm really at now, the cool thing about farming is there's a lot of systems involved, and I think that's a lot of fun. Sitting there in the middle of the winter and imagining how your sweet potato is going to go, crop is going to go, and planning all that out to a T, and then executing it, I think is really, really fun. So I've really still loved that aspect of it. But I'll be honest, with the thing I love the most at this point, watching people learn farming is the most gratifying thing in the world. It's so cool to watch people go from like, I don't even know what this plant is or how to take care of it, to being able to just like talk about like how long it's going to be till it's mature, some of the nutrients it needs the most, how to take care of it exactly. Watching someone grow in that way is unbelievable. That's my favorite part of my job by far.
Well, that's awesome. So you're kind of a people person and a plant person.
I'm a plant person that likes. I don't know what I am. I think I'm mostly a plant person, but I do like my people. Yeah, I like my crew a lot.
That's awesome. And you guys offer like a whole array of educational opportunities as well, right? Like I saw a lot about field trips and stuff on your website as well. I think that's a great opportunity for younger kids, maybe high school kids like you to get involved, right? Yeah,
so we're working on expanding the high school side of things. But right now, all field trips are free. If you can get there, generally, we can get you a class. We do also have a bus fund. And so we just want, the Nipperts were really, really generous. And so the fact that the foundation is what it is, our goal is to just get people there. So yes, there's field trips, there's summer camps, there's homeschool classes that come out, there's all kinds of stuff, volunteer opportunities. And we do a lot of one-off things. A school calls and be like, hey, we want to do this. It's like, come on out.
Yeah, do you have any opportunities for like adults who would just maybe be interested in seeing the property or seeing what you guys do on a day-to-day basis? Are there like events that you guys host for adults to come out as well? Yeah,
so I'm going to speak mostly for my department, for the garden department. We really started ramping up events this past year. We do like picnics, farm tours, stuff like that. Again, goal of education, we get people out. And so maybe for the picnic, you get to eat some food, hang out on the farm. I'm going to talk your ear off for like 20 minutes, and then you're just going to hang out and walk around. And we've had a lot of success with those. The farm tour is really cool. It's like you get to walk around the farm, but you're going to be learning at every kind of station you go to. Beyond that, I mentioned it a bit earlier, was this cultivation club. It was a volunteer program we started this year that I am really happy with. I could not be happier with it. It's this time to kind of get people out, adults, and have them work on the farm. We get projects done. But we also get to talk the whole time. So the crew's answering garden questions. They're asking us why we're doing this thing. And that's our favorite opportunity right now to get people on the farm. We're looking to expand that next year because we each have people like banging down the door to get in, and we can't get, once Cultivation Club starts, it's like we can't even get them to leave, which is a great problem.
That's
to have.
awesome.
We're having a lot of fun, and they're there every week, and they're always smiling, they're always happy, and so we're looking to expand that. Because the farm is awesome. We love being on the farm. We work really hard to build it up and make it what it is. And so we want to share that with as many people as possible. So right now, events and volunteering is kind of where we're at, but maybe something else in the future.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
So is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to share, make sure people know about generative farming or the importance or anything about your job that you wanted to mention?
No, I think we hit most things. I think the apprenticeship's really important. I think that supporting people in learning farming is really important, and like I said, the average age of our farmers is getting so up there that we really need to be building young people into farmers. Yeah.
We we're recording this in October, but this probably won't come out until November. But just in case it is in time, what is the deadline for the application for this apprenticeship?
When this comes out, we'll probably just be opening it.
Okay, perfect.
It doesn't really start until like April.
Okay.
So all throughout the winter, we're kind of sifting through candidates and seeing who wants to be there. But yeah, if this comes out, it should be hopefully open.
Okay, great. So if you guys are listening and you're interested in checking out the apprenticeship program at Greenacres in the garden department, you can check out their website or social media, and hopefully this will kind of let people know that there are opportunities out there to learn more about farming. And there's so much that, we're very lucky or spoiled, or I don't know what the right word is. We can just go to the grocery store and get whatever we need. Mm-hmm. We don't have to think about how it got there, where it came from, like any sacrifices that were made by humans planting or the animals that we're eating, that sort of thing. And I think it's really neat to look at it as like more holistically, which I feel like you guys do at Greenacres.
100%.
And it sounds like all the benefits that I wouldn't have thought off the top of my head. But the food tastes better. It's healthier. Like the chemicals and no pesticides and things seems like so obvious to me. That's where my mind would have went. Like I didn't think about, it might actually taste better. And, and not just be like have something unhealthy, but it could be healthier for me.
Yeah, that's funny because my mind initially went to like, oh no, when you go to a farmer's market and you get good stuff, it always tastes better. Like, my mind went straight to the
taste. Context is totally different. It's totally different.
It does make sense, but that's our brains went to different places.
And definitely, I think the apprenticeship program's a great one. I think as well, like the summer camps for kids next summertime. If you're hopefully you can kind of get out ahead of that and sign your kids up. But I think that's a great opportunity. Yeah.
Can you tell us about maybe one of your favorite successes or a story where you learned from the year past something that was interesting to you?
So farming is really funny in the way that sometimes you only get one shot a year to learn something. Say maybe there's something you want to try in the spring, a new way to do something. If it doesn't go well, sometimes the next time you get to try that is the following spring. I always say that some of the best potato farmers are old because you plant potatoes once a year, and a 60-year-old potato farmer might have 40 times the grown potatoes. I've been doing this for 11 years, and I've only got 11 rounds of potatoes in me. So there is this aspect of time that is really difficult. And so when we look at this Layfield project, we've tried a lot of different things, and we've had a number of failures. We have a number of successes. In terms of what our best success was we had one this year. We are always kind of looking to grow, obviously, crops with a high yield, right? Conventional agriculture is all about high yield. Quality is kind of not really important, and a lot of conventional crops are looked at for only yield. But we're looking at, we want a decent yield, and we want a high nutrient profile in our food. And so this year, one of the crops that we were really happy with was we had this onion crop. So you plant onions once in the spring, you know what I mean? You get one shot at it a year. We had this system where we kind of been using this compost and not tilling and working on our soil. And we had this just bumper crop of onions, more onions than we've ever had before. We were really excited about it. Now, testing the nutrients of food is a very complex process where you can send it off away to a lab, but we can also do an in-house test that isn't perfect, but it's a nice indication. So what we did with these onions, we had this huge yield, and we decided to test the Brix of the onions. That's BRIX, which is a measure of the sugars in the plant. When we measured our Brix for this onion crop, not only do we have all these onions, But the Brix measurement was seeing something along the lines of 10, 11, 11.8 was one of the higher readings that we got. And according to kind of some conventional charts, 6 Brix, so whatever, I can't remember the unit of measure, but 6 is considered an excellent onion.
Wow.
And so not only are we having a nice yield, but we also have a quality of onion that is much higher than even what would be considered excellent by this measurement. Now, the thing that's important to talk about with Brix is it is a measure of sugars and not a measure of necessarily how nutrient dense the food is. So we can't say these onions are like the best onions in the world, but generally if the sugars are higher, the plant is healthier. If the plant is healthier, we have a higher nutrient profile. So it's a really, really exciting thing, and I think that it's an aspect of farming that I think that small scale farms are really doing a lot better job of. We're not growing food to ship it. Mm-hmm. We're growing food that tastes good. We're growing food that does well in our environment. We're growing food that is often maybe an heirloom variety or something like that, and that's completely different than a more conventional operation.
So you can take risks that maybe others can't, or you're willing to at least to figure out.
Sure. My tomato might not ship for 2 weeks, but it's going to sit on your counter for 4 days before you eat it. It's going to be delicious. Something like that. And that's where small farms can succeed over a larger yield-focused farm is flavor and quality and all those things.
And what did you do differently? Like, why did you get so many onions this year?
We just messed them up so many times previously. We finally got it right. We just compost is always going to be a big part of our system because we're really focused on the biological aspect of farming, and compost is really great for the biology. We just did a number of things right. The soil was loose. I talked about the physical and chemical and biological aspects of the soil. I think we just nailed all 3 of them in this particular crop. There's a really interesting, when it comes to nutrient density of food, I think one of the most revealing things, I talk about this a lot, is there's this organization called the Bionutrient Food Association, and they take all these samples of food from all over the country, and they kind of look at the nutrient profile of them. They do that testing, the more intensive testing I was talking about. And one of the only agricultural crops that is grown for quality, or has always been grown for quality, is grapes. Okay, because good grapes make good wine. Yeah, right? Good grapes make good wine. It kind of makes sense. It's one of the few that is grown for quality. And in all their testing of all these nutrients, the grapes are the most interesting to me because they found that the poorest quality grape and the highest quality grape can have a 14 times difference in nutrients.
Wow.
And that sounds like, 14, but when you think about it, that's the nutrient of one grape can have as many as 14. That's wild.
Right. Yeah, that is so wild.
Yes, and
it makes me sad. Like, what have I been eating?
Right. That. Yeah. It's really tough, and it's when you start getting into these kind of small farms that are growing food in really amazing ways, and you even start tasting it. That grape's going to taste amazing, and kind of getting into that realm of like, I can eat less and I get more nutrients out of it. That's a wild concept. And just because I ate a carrot doesn't mean I ate a good carrot. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so it really gets complex there. But at the end of the day, it's like if things are growing well, they're generally, in my opinion, better for all of us and better for our environment.
So that makes sense.
These onions that are like superhuman onions, did you cook them into anything? Like, what do they taste like?
They're delicious. Yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah, they're so good. They're so good. I mean, it's an onion, so it's like I'm not eating it raw. Yeah. Like, wow, this is great. I mean, and they're not even sweet onions. They're for storage for all winter and stuff like that. But they're good. They're just good. Yeah. I mean, they just taste good. You cook them down, caramelize them. You're like, wow, this is so delicious. Like, what'd you do to these? It's like nothing. It's awesome. It's a cool feeling.
Do you like take notes then and be like, this year we tilled the soil this much, where we added this much compost, and then the next year you look at your notes and you're like, oh, maybe we should change this differently? Or do you like just kind of pick off the top of your head what you want to change?
I wish I was analytical enough to take that many notes. I always say at the end of every season, wow, I wish I took more notes.
Yeah.
For me personally, I think other farmers are going to be different. For me, it's off the top of my head. Okay. You know what I mean? It's just remembering and learning, and that's probably what's taken me so many years to be even remotely decent at this. It's just like trial and failure. But yeah, it's just kind of learning it, and learning again, like I talked about in the beginning, the kind of principles. If you get really good at the principles, you don't have to know all the analytical details. Or if you kind of get the analytical details kind of in your gut and you just know them, it gets a lot easier. There are people who are, they're great on my team who are much more analytical, and we're getting better at taking notes, which has been really fun. But yeah, most for me, at least for a long time, was off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of go through the same things. I mean, it's hard to compare, but like when you introduce certain animals or, you do just different, I'm trying to think of like a good example that I could give, but we know how this animal might react, and we're like, oh, afterwards we should write down and say what we should have done differently or how this could have gone better. And like, then you don't, and you're like, next year, what did we do? Did we put up burlap that year?
Yeah. It's exactly like that. It's exactly like that.
So, but I feel like just like you, I feel like a lot of times the things you learn from the most from are your failures, right? Like those are the ones that kind of stick with you.
That again.
Yeah,
you're able to learn the best from those, for better, for worse. But
yeah, absolutely, fail forward. That's what I always tell the apprentices.
Fail forward.
I love that. Well, I think, do you have any other questions?
I got nothing.
I think that was really helpful and informative.
Yeah.
We end every episode with a, what can I do? So if there's one thing you could tell people to be better stewards of the earth, what can I do?
If there's one thing that I wish people did more is that I wish consumers would engage with their food more. And what I mean by that, I guess one of my favorite sayings, and I've been saying this for years, and I don't know who I stole it from, but someone said this that was much wiser than I am, is that Americans are uninterested in food because American food is uninteresting. Or I should even say Americans are uninterested in vegetables because American vegetables are uninteresting. And what you said about the supermarket is very true. How lucky are we that we can go out, walk into the supermarket in the middle of January and see tomatoes, avocados, we can see anything we want whenever we want. That's a really amazing thing. What we need to understand with that kind of cool thing of having food all the time is that what it takes to get the food there is not necessarily a good thing for us. So what I mean by that is food is grown to ship, and food is then grown to look good on a shelf. How many times have any of us bought greens from the store, got them home, 2 days later they're mush? They've probably been in shipping, who knows how long that they were in transit. One of the things, going back actually to that strawberry patch where we were picking the snails off of, while we were picking snails, we were obviously eating the strawberries also. And I remember that I ate a strawberry and it was like, what is this? I've never had anything like this before. This is what a strawberry tastes like? I've actually, up until this point, I don't know if I've ever even had a real strawberry. I ask people all the time, I go, what does it look like when you cut a strawberry open from the supermarket? What color is it on the inside?
It's often white.
It's white.
White, yeah.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That's just that plant. It's been kind of pushed to grow. That white is just flavorless cellulose. It's just plant structure. There's not sweetness in it. There's not nutrients in it. It's just plant structure. When you go to the supermarket and get a tomato, and it's like, oh, it's this beautiful red tomato, and you cut it, and you look at the center of it, and it's white on the inside, it's not supposed to look like that.
Yeah.
I actually, believe it or not, was a really picky eater growing up. I did not like vegetables, which is hilarious.
That is funny.
And then all of a sudden you eat a tomato in the middle of summer, and you go, whoa, this is what this tastes like? This is amazing. And I think that if people understood that we do have this innate ability to taste food, and when it's good, it's our bodies telling us that's good for us. Mm-hmm. Doritos have kind of messed that up for a lot of us. But when it comes to vegetables, I think it's really, really, really important. And so I wish people engaged with that more and spent time going to the farmer's market and spent time meeting farmers and spent time understanding that there are people that really care about food and really care about the environment, and those things can intersect on farms. And that if we support those small farms, not only can we get better, hopefully healthier food for ourselves, but we can also support local businesses. Mm-hmm. These farmers really care a lot, and a lot of them are working 70-hour weeks just to make ends meet. And I just think it's really important for consumers to, if they can, find a way to engage with food a little bit more. The other thing I see sometimes is people will, when they see livestock on the farm, they go, oh my gosh, how can you know this animal and then eat it, right? And what I always say back is, how can you not? We've gotten so used to, you go to the supermarket, you get everything you want, you grab a package of meat off the shelf, and you just goes, yeah, it's a packet of meat. I don't want to know that this was alive.
Yeah.
Understanding that it was and that it deserves a good life is really, really important. It's something that we really believe on the farm. And so engaging with that side of it too, that scary side. I can look at a cow and it's the cutest thing I've ever seen, and I know it's going to go to the butcher, and I think it's really important to cherish that cow had a good life, and that when I eat it, I make sure I eat every last bite and understand that this cow was raised in a way that's going to be more nourishing to me, and I had a good life, and that it's delicious, and that the vegetables I'm eating with are delicious, and that is just a really important thing that I feel like we've lost.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that kind of detachment of the consumers is kind of what's contributed to like the loss of like the quality of animals' lives in farming over the years. Because, like you said, when you have to go to the supermarket and it's just a package of meat, you don't even think about the chicken or the cow that this came from. You don't care if they have a bad life because you don't even think of them. But
you don't want to.
When you're with the animal, seeing it grow, seeing it live, you want to make sure it's got the best life. And also, oftentimes, just like with the veggies, that turns out being the best tasting stuff as well, and the highest quality stuff is when it's actually loved.
Yes, and if we had more farms doing that, and more people supporting those communities, or more people supporting those farms that support those communities, we would have a really, really different food landscape, and I think it would be a world that a lot of us would be really happy to see.
Definitely. Yeah, that all makes so much sense, and it is one of those things that's hard to think about with the animals, but at the same time, I'd rather have an animal, know I'm eating an animal that had an amazing life until the very last moment, than an animal that probably had a miserable life, and I didn't have to look at it.
It's ignorance is not always bliss, and we always say on the farm that we hope that our animals only have one bad day.
Yeah, definitely. And there's something to be said, too, for the fact that you said, we can go to a supermarket right now, we get any produce that we want any time of year, it doesn't matter. I do feel like you'll hear kind of like my parents talk about it and stuff growing up where it was like, no, there was watermelon season. That's what made watermelon so good. It's you only got to eat it this one time a year, it was a special thing. And now it's like, no, I can get a watermelon whenever I want.
Whenever you want. And that, I'll tell you what, when the heat of the summer's going, you get that watermelon fresh, nothing better.
Nothing hits like it.
Nothing. But also what it is like when we had a community of, when communities would be canning or preserving, we're taking that food at its peak and we're then saving it rather than having it grown, in South America and shipped up to us. And it's just a very different food landscape, and I think that it makes it really hard for people to eat responsibly. It really does. It really does. And I don't blame anyone for having trouble with it. I think it's really hard. But I think that the solution is really simple. It's just, just buy closer to home and buy things in season. Can them if you can. It's fun. Canning's fun. It's a great thing to engage with your food more and make it more of a part of our lives. I think that so many times we're eating on the go. We're all so busy. But if you slow down a little bit, and I'm not good at this, I'll be honest. I'm not good at it either. But you slow down and enjoy food and cherish it a little bit more, I think that it goes a long way.
That's awesome. I love it.
I do too. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Ian.
Of course.
We appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here and come to the zoo. And teaching us so much about this, and I hope everyone knows a little bit more. I know I learned more. I still feel like you said, it's very complex, and there's so much into farming that we have I'll never understand. But I'm glad that there are people like you that do and really care about it and are working hard for that. So,
and can you plug the website one more time for anyone who's interested?
Yeah, it's I don't know the exact URL, but it is just the Greenacres Foundation.
Greenacres Foundation.
You'll find us right there on Google. Not hard to find.
Check out the farm store if you
have
time.
Store, yeah.
Some fresh produce.
Media, all that stuff, yeah.
Awesome.
Farm store, check out some events, check out their website. Definitely.
Yes. Join the cultivation club, come volunteer with us.
Yeah.
You get to hear me just ramble even more.
I want to sign up for a tour now.
Yeah, please do.
I will. All right, well, thank you. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah, until next time, take care, everyone.